When the lights dimmed at the Target Center in Minneapolis on October 15th, 1987, nobody in that arena knew they were about to witness music history being made. What started as Whitney Houston's routine stop on her Moment of Truth tour would become the most talked about spontaneous collaboration in music history. But what nobody knew was that Prince himself was hiding in the shadows, dealing with his own personal crisis that would change everything. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss more untold stories about music's greatest legends. And drop a comment below telling us about your favorite Whitney Houston or Prince moment. Whitney Houston was at the absolute peak of her career in 1987. Her second album, Whitney, had just become the first album by a female artist to debut at #1 on the Billboard 200. She was America's sweetheart, the voice of a generation, and her tours were selling out faster than tickets could be printed. But success came with a price that very few people understood. The pressure was immense. Every performance had to be perfect. Every note had to soar. Every outfit, every dance move, every smile had to be flawless. Whitney carried the weight of millions of expectations on her shoulders every single night. She was the daughter of gospel legend Cissy Houston, the protege of Clive Davis, and the voice that could move mountains. But that night in Minneapolis, something felt different. Prince, meanwhile, was going through one of the most difficult periods of his life. His latest album, Sign of the Times, had received critical acclaim, but hadn't achieved the commercial success he'd hoped for. He was questioning his artistic direction, feeling isolated in his Paisley Park studio, just 20 minutes away from where Whitney was performing. The music industry was changing, and for the first time in his career, Prince felt uncertain about his place in it. What nobody in the audience knew was that Prince had been a secret admirer of Whitney's voice since her debut. He owned every one of her albums, and greatest love of all was a song he'd listened to when he needed inspiration. He respected her vocal range, her emotional delivery, and the way she could make 50,000 people feel like she was singing directly to them. But he'd never had the courage to reach out to her. On that particular Thursday night, Prince was driving past the Target Center when he saw the massive crowds and the bright lights advertising Whitney's show. On impulse, something he'd later describe as divine intervention, he pulled over. His security guard, Gilbert Davidson, would later recall that Prince sat in the car for almost 20 minutes, just staring at the arena. "I want to go in," Prince finally said, "but I don't want anyone to know I'm here." Gilbert made some calls, and within 30 minutes, they had arranged for Prince to watch the show from a private box usually reserved for VIPs who wanted to remain anonymous. Prince entered the arena wearing a simple black hoodie, dark sunglasses, and a baseball cap pulled low over his distinctive hairstyle. Whitney's performance that night was electric from the moment she stepped on stage. She opened with, "I Want to Dance with Somebody," and the entire arena erupted. Her voice was in perfect form, hitting every note with the precision and power that had made her a global superstar. The audience was completely captivated, singing along to every word, dancing in the aisles. But something extraordinary was happening in that private box. Prince, who rarely showed emotion in public, was visibly moved by Whitney's performance. Gilbert later said he'd never seen Prince react to another artist's live performance the way he reacted to Whitney's that night. "She's not just singing," Prince whispered to Gilbert during How Will I Know. "She's channeling something divine. That's not just technique. That's pure spirit." As Whitney moved through her set list, Prince found himself studying every aspect of her performance. The way she connected with the audience, the way she used the entire stage, the way she could go from powerful belt notes to intimate whispers in the same song. He was taking mental notes, not to copy her style, but to understand what made her so special. Then came the moment that would change everything. Whitney was about to begin Greatest Love of All, the song that had become her signature, when something caught her eye. In the darkened VIP section, she glimpsed a familiar silhouette. The way the figure moved, the distinctive posture, something about it struck her as oddly familiar. She paused for a moment, squinting slightly against the stage lights. "You know what, Minneapolis?" Whitney said into her microphone, her voice carrying that warm, conversational tone that made every audience feel like they were in her living room. I think we might have some special company tonight, the crowd roared, thinking she was just engaging in her usual between-song banter. But Whitney's security team had already confirmed what her instincts had told her. Prince was in the building. Now, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, Whitney continued, her smile growing wider as she paced across the stage. But when you have genuine royalty in the house, sometimes you just have to acknowledge it. The audience was confused but excited, not sure where Whitney was going with this. Some people started looking around, wondering if there was an actual member of royalty in attendance. In the VIP box, Prince felt his heart racing. He'd come here to watch, to be inspired, to maybe escape his own troubles for a few hours. He hadn't expected to be noticed, and he certainly hadn't expected Whitney Houston to call attention to his presence. "Prince!" Whitney called out, her voice now carrying clearly through the arena's sound system. "I know you're here. Don't make me sing you out of hiding." The arena exploded. 50,000 people were suddenly on their feet, screaming, looking in every direction, trying to spot the purple one. Prince felt frozen in his seat, caught between his desire to remain anonymous and the incredible honor of being acknowledged by Whitney Houston in front of her audience. But Whitney wasn't done. In a move that would be talked about for decades, she made a decision that had never happened before in the history of major arena concerts. She stopped her show completely. "Ladies and gentlemen," Whitney announced, "we're going to take a little break from our regular programming. Prince, you can hide in that VIP box, or you can come down here and show these beautiful people what Minneapolis royalty looks like." The crowd was now in a complete frenzy. The chanting started immediately. "Prince! Prince! Prince!" But it wasn't demanding or aggressive. It was joyful, welcoming. The kind of chant that only happens when an audience is witnessing something completely unprecedented. Prince sat in that VIP box for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds. Gilbert watched as Prince's expression changed from embarrassment to contemplation to something that looked like acceptance. "This is crazy," Prince said, shaking his head. But he was smiling. "She's giving you an honor," Gilbert replied. "Whitney Houston just stopped her show for you. That's never happened before." Prince stood up. He removed his baseball cap, pulled off his hoodie to reveal a simple but elegant black shirt, and ran his hands through his hair. "If I'm going down there, I'm going to need my guitar." What happened next was pure magic orchestrated by the universe itself. Prince's security team somehow managed to get one of his guitars from Paisley Park to the arena in record time. Meanwhile, Whitney kept the audience entertained with stories about growing up in Newark, about her mother Cissy Houston, and about the power of music to bring people together. "You know," Whitney told the audience as they waited, "there are certain artists who inspire other artists. Prince is one of those people. His music has touched my life in ways that I can't even begin to describe. So tonight, if he's willing, I want to share this stage with someone I consider to be true musical royalty." When Prince finally appeared at the side of the stage, guitar in hand, the audience reaction was unlike anything anyone had ever heard. It wasn't just screaming or cheering. It was a sound that seemed to come from the collective soul of 50,000 people who knew they were about to witness something historic. Prince walked to the center of the stage with that distinctive, confident stride that had made him a legend. He embraced Whitney, and in that moment, the two artists exchanged something that nobody in the audience could hear, but everyone could feel. Mutual respect, artistic recognition, a shared understanding of what it meant to be chosen by music itself. "What do you want to play?" Whitney asked Prince, her microphone still picking up their conversation. Prince smiled and played the opening chords to Purple Rain, but then he shifted into something else, something that would blend perfectly with Whitney's vocal range. It was a musical conversation happening in real time, and the audience was holding its collective breath. What emerged was a version of Greatest Love of All, unlike anything anyone had ever heard. Prince's guitar provided a haunting, beautiful foundation that transformed Whitney's already powerful song into something transcendent. His playing was subtle, supportive, never trying to overshadow Whitney's voice, but instead creating a musical bed that seemed to lift her vocals to even greater heights. Whitney's performance of the song that night was later described by music critics as the definitive version. Her voice soared over Prince's guitar work with an emotional intensity that brought tears to the eyes of hardened music industry professionals who had heard her sing the song hundreds of times. But the magic wasn't just in the music. It was in watching two artists, at the peak of their respective powers, creating something together that neither could have achieved alone. Prince's guitar seemed to understand exactly what Whitney's voice needed, and Whitney's vocals seemed to give Prince's playing a context and purpose that elevated it beyond mere technical proficiency. The audience was completely silent during the performance, afraid to break the spell that was being cast on stage. When Whitney reached the final notes of the song, hitting the high notes that had made her famous, Prince's guitar provided a perfect counterpoint that made those notes seem to hang in the air forever. When the song ended, the silence lasted for almost 10 seconds. Then the arena erupted in the most sustained ovation in its history. People were crying, screaming, hugging strangers, and calling out "thank you" over and over again. Prince and Whitney stood on that stage, both visibly emotional, both understanding that they had just shared something extraordinary. Whitney reached out and took Prince's hand, and together they bowed to an audience that was showing them the kind of appreciation usually reserved for religious experiences. "Minneapolis," Whitney said into her microphone, her voice thick with emotion. "You just witnessed something that I will remember for the rest of my life. And Prince," she turned to face him, "thank you for trusting me with your artistry tonight." Prince stepped to the microphone, something he rarely did during his own concerts when speaking to audiences. "Whitney," he said, his voice quiet but clear, "your voice is a gift from God. Thank you for sharing it with all of us." The two artists embraced again, and Prince quietly exited the stage, leaving Whitney to finish her concert. But something had changed. The energy in the arena was different. The audience had witnessed something that transcended typical entertainment. They had seen two masters of their craft create spontaneous art together, and everyone present understood that they had been part of something historic. Whitney continued her concert, but everyone could tell that the experience had affected her deeply. Her performance for the rest of the night had an added emotional dimension, as if the collaboration with Prince had unlocked something new in her artistic expression. After the show, Whitney and Prince spent 2 hours talking in her dressing room. They discussed music, creativity, the pressures of fame, and their shared love for artists like Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin. Prince told Whitney that watching her perform had reminded him why he fell in love with music in the first place. "You don't just sing," Prince told her. "You heal people. I saw it tonight. I felt it tonight." Whitney later said that Prince's words gave her a new understanding of her own purpose as an artist. "He helped me see that what I do isn't just entertainment," she explained in a later interview. "It's a form of ministry. Music can heal hearts and lift spirits in ways that medicine can't touch." The impact of that night went far beyond the 2 hours of concert time. Bootleg recordings of their collaboration began circulating immediately, and while the audio quality was poor, the emotional impact was unmistakable. Music critics who had access to those recordings wrote about them as if they were reviewing a religious experience. Rolling Stone magazine later called it the most significant spontaneous musical collaboration of the 1980s. The magazine's review stated, "What Prince and Whitney created together in 1981? Minneapolis wasn't just a performance. It was a masterclass in what happens when two artists operating at the highest level of their craft come together in a moment of pure inspiration." The friendship that began that night lasted for years. Prince would often call Whitney when he was working on new material, not for collaboration, but for perspective. Whitney would sometimes visit Paisley Park when she was struggling with creative decisions or dealing with the pressures of fame. "Prince taught me that it's okay to be protective of your artistry," Whitney later explained. "He showed me that you can be successful and still maintain your artistic integrity. That was something I really needed to learn." For Prince, the experience with Whitney reminded him of the power of vulnerability in performance. "She's not afraid to let people see her heart," he said about Whitney. "That takes courage that most artists don't have." The collaboration also had a profound effect on both artists' subsequent work. Whitney's next album showed a new level of artistic maturity and emotional depth that critics directly attributed to her experience working with Prince. Prince's following albums showed a renewed confidence and a willingness to collaborate that hadn't been present in his earlier work. The audience members from that night never forgot what they witnessed. In online forums and social media posts years later, people would share their memories of being present for the spontaneous collaboration. Many described it as the best live music experience of their lives. "I've been to hundreds of concerts," wrote one fan on a music forum in 2010. "I've seen the Rolling Stones, I've seen Paul McCartney, I've seen Bruce Springsteen, but nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to that night when Whitney and Prince created magic together in Minneapolis. It was like watching lightning being born." The Target Center, now known as the Excel Energy Center, has a small plaque in the VIP section where Prince sat that night. It simply reads, October 15th, 1987, the night Whitney Houston and Prince reminded us why music matters. Music historians now consider that night to be a perfect example of how great art can emerge from spontaneous moments of connection between artists. It demonstrates that the most powerful performances often happen when artists step outside their comfort zones and trust in the moment. The story of that night has become part of both artists' legacies. It represents the best of what music can be when ego is set aside in favor of pure, artistic expression. It shows that even megastars can surprise themselves when they're willing to take risks and trust in the power of collaboration. Whitney Houston and Prince both left us far too soon, but that October night in Minneapolis lives on as a reminder of their incredible talents and their willingness to create something beautiful together. In a world where so much music is planned, produced, and perfected in studios, their spontaneous collaboration reminds us that sometimes the most meaningful art happens in the moment, between artists who respect each other enough to create something neither could achieve alone. For those 50,000 people in the Target Center that night, and for the millions who have heard the story since, it serves as a reminder that music at its best isn't just entertainment. It's communion. It's connection. It's proof that when artists open their hearts to each other and to their audiences, magic can happen. The night Whitney Houston stopped her concert for Prince wasn't just about two famous people sharing a stage. It was about the power of music to create moments that transcend ordinary experience. It was about respect, artistry, and the beautiful things that can happen when talented people choose to lift each other up rather than compete. That's not just a concert story. That's a lesson about how we can all create magic when we're willing to be vulnerable, generous, and open to the unexpected gifts that life offers us. And sometimes, just sometimes, those gifts come in the form of purple rain falling on the greatest love of all. Today, music streaming services have made it possible for new generations to discover the individual artistry of both Whitney and Prince. But what they can't capture is the energy of that spontaneous moment when two legends chose to create together. Young artists often ask what made the music of the 80s and 90s so special, and nights like October 15th, 1987 provide the answer. In our current era of social media and instant everything, that Minneapolis concert reminds us of a time when magic couldn't be planned, packaged, or posted. It had to be lived. The 50,000 people in that arena didn't experience that collaboration through their phone screens. They felt it with their whole beings, and that's something that can never be replicated or replaced. Whitney's daughter, Bobby Christina, later said that her mother would often tell the story of that night, especially when she was struggling with creative decisions. Mama would say, "Sometimes you just have to trust the music and let it lead you where it wants to go," Bobby Christina shared in a 2011 interview. Prince's sister Tyka Nelson revealed that Prince kept a recording of that performance in his private vault at Paisley Park and would listen to it whenever he needed to remember why he started making music. "It reminded him that music is about connection, not perfection," Tyka explained. That night in Minneapolis wasn't just a concert. It was a masterclass in artistic courage, mutual respect, and the beautiful unpredictability of live music. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in spontaneous moments that can never be repeated, only remembered and cherished forever.